Hey, um, thanks for watching my videos. This is the first one in maybe 2 months. I moved to a new city, a city that happens to not really have much of a Netrunner community, um, and trying to get one started. This is a random game that I was playing with one of the new members of the group, Felipe. Um, just kind of a fun deck to play. Um, maybe not really a fun deck to play against, but it's really on the top of the line for kind of a fun deck to play. Either it works very well early on, and then the rest of the game is kind of smooth sailing, or it gets horribly put into bad shape very early on, and then just it has a very quick loss. So in terms of gameplay style, it's definitely high variance. So I got a new tripod. Hopefully the shot will be a bit better. I think the camera's a bit out of focus, so the footage is not going to be great, unfortunately. Still kind of working with it. I changed the height while I was recording, didn't really get a good focus on it. There's also a good bit of glare on the card, so I apologize. I'm going to try to use a click counter. I'm really bad about it. I like calling it out as I go. So, sorry if that's your pet peeve. I'm playing default HP. I've got the alt art from it. I take Mulligan. Felipe is using 3 tag bad pub counters as this click tracker. I'm using the default included card, although I'm going to use it less than half the time because it's really hard for me to use it as Corp. I just get distracted from using it, so sorry. Felipe is playing Gabe, and he's got a pretty strong criminal deck. And I am playing a fairly unusual HB identity. It's one that you'll kind of understand when you see some of the first moves that it makes. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes the deck performs really well, and a lot of the time, it'll lose some of the key steps to its gameplay style, and it will lose out in very early on. So I mulligan because I had no ice, and I mulligan into 2 Cerebral Overriders, a Grindel, and 2 pieces of ice. If I remember correctly, it's a Victor 1-0 and an Eli 1-0. And I also have one agenda. I believe it is... No, I'm sorry. It's a Jerk Gamble. Or Hedge Fund. Sorry. So I take 4 credits, up to 9. I install up to 10. And I install to protect both of my centrals. Very typical first move. Both of these ice are pretty powerful. Victor 1-0 is a code gate, and he loses out to Yang with 3 strength. From many attempts to get Stronger Together to work, I kind of tend to forget that strength 3 is a bit of a disadvantage. So Felipe draws, and he plays Easy Mark, and he runs HQ. I res Victor, and he spends a click to avoid brain damage. I was discussing with him whether he wanted to take brain damage or move on. And he decides to click through the brain damage. So that's kind of how it goes. My watch is in the shop. You can see how long the match is going to last. So that's the end of his turn. The 4th click is to break. I draw a Junebug, I draw again, and I get a mandatory upgrades. So I've got Junebug, Cerebral Overrider, and a Grindel. can kind of take a guess on what kind of a deck this is based on that. And I draw again, and I get a Archived Memories. So not really seeing what I'm looking for early in the game. Kind of puts me in a tough spot. I take a bit of a gamble. I drop the Grindle unprotected, and I hope that he doesn't run on it, or that he'll run out of money before he runs on it. Some runners, especially criminals, I think, well, I guess more shapers, will not run on remotes. So I show the Grendel, and with plenty of money, he goes in and crashes. One of the good playstyles for HB is to use clicks to distract and waste time. For 2 credits and a click, dropping a Grendel is fine for me. It means he doesn't want to click through HQ, and instead he installs Sneak Door Beta and runs anyway. So he looks at one of the cards, he sees Cerebral Overrider, trashes for free. His trash cost is 0. But this is key to the playstyle of this deck. I need him to know that I have Cerebral Overrider in the deck. I need him to be very aware that I have Cerebral Overrider in the deck. So I draw a Jackson Howard and an Eli 1-0. I install Eli 1-0 over Archives because it's Sneak Door. And I gain credit from doing it. And I guess that's the end of my turn. What was my third action? I guess I drew twice. He installs Fairy, draws Fairy. Third click, he runs. No, I'm sorry. Third click, he Sneak Doors. I res Eli for 3. And Abuthi takes the end around. I'm going to work harder about trying to get the hands into the shot of the camera. I was shooting with the camera against the wall by the table. I'm going to try putting it on the other side. I think people tend to sit farther away from the wall. So, puzzling over all of these traps and no good cards to activate them. Alright, Corp Draw. I see a rainbow, I believe. Yes, rainbow. I'm including rainbow to be tax ice. It doesn't work very well if you get a 3 or 4 strength breaker with variable strength. But it tends to be pretty good tax ice anyway, especially early on. Later on, you tend to get the single efficient breaker that people tend to run, depending on their deck. I draw twice, and I believe I install Jackson Howard as an emergency. I drew a priority rec, and I drew a mandatory upgrades, so I'm not terribly interested in having those sit in my hand. So I put a prior rec in Archives, I put a Junebug in Archives, and that's it. I believe that I had intended, I end up making a bit of a strategic misplay with having that Junebug be face down. I intended to show that to the runner to spook them. So this, as you can see, I'm promptly forgetting about the click counter. So Felipe drops HQ interface, and he's a Sneak Door, and he's clicking through the Eli. This is probably a good move. HQ is pretty vulnerable, especially in non-Jinteki decks. And he's looking at 2 out of 5, which is pretty good. He sees the second Cerebral Overrider, which he trashes. And then he sees Mandatory Upgrades. That was the one agenda in my hand, and he pulled it. So he gets 2 points. Mandatory upgrades is a really fun agenda, insofar as it's very difficult to use. With 6 advancement requirements, it requires a minimum of 3 turns, conventionally, to score it, without the use of chaotic labor or of Trick of Light or psychographics or otherwise. Psychographics and Trick of Light are both difficult to use in HP. They both require importing all of the relevant cards. So a little difficult to use. I install Ice and I play Hedge Fund and trying to maintain my money. My Jackson Howard is still face down on the table, and he's been there for 1 turn. I have no agendas in hand. He's trashed 2 of my traps out of hand. So yeah. This deck can completely crash and burn, and I'm still in the crash and burn range. He's stolen one of my essential agendas. He sees Machine no Sheen. He's puzzling over it. You can see why the playstyle includes multiple copies of Cerebral Overrider. He sees the second card, which is Rainbow. I Corp Draw, second Jackson, which is good news for me since I was planning to use the other one to recoup agenda. I forgot that the second card that I trashed was Junebug and not a second agenda. I end up scooping it back into R&D, which is a bit of a mistake. I draw. I see Private Contracts, which I have overlooked as an econ card for a long time. A click for 2 credits sounds great in Runner, but in Corp, not so great. The 5 to trash, though, is quite good, especially if you're playing default HP and gaining credit. So Felipe draws, and after playing Sure Gamble, he runs R&D. On his 3rd click, I have an Ichi-1-0 there. I may have remembered incorrectly at the beginning of the video, but it is Ichi-1-0. And so it's trash, trace for brain damage. He's got a fairy, which means he can break it for 2 credits. He loses the fairy. I am fine either way. Ichi's main deal is to be expensive, and depriving the runner of their Sentry Breaker works just fine for me. So, holding out pretty good. Really hoping he's not going to see anything off the top of R&D. 1 agenda down is no good for me. I showed the Jackson Howard, he gets ready to trash, and I pull 3 cards out of the archives. I pulled Grendel and the 2 hidden cards. I did not look at the hidden cards. If I had, I would have left the Junebug in and maybe recycled something else. So, not what I intended to do, but ends up not really mattering too much. It was just the 1 card in archives that I worried about. Another thing worth sort of remembering is that when I am certainly I certainly am guilty of this. Having Sneak Door Beta means you completely forget about face down cards in archives. It's just kind of how it goes. But with 2 pieces of ice on archives and 2 on HQ, Sneak Door is not looking so good. I install to gain a credit, and I hope I remember to take a credit. I don't, but I do Machine install. So I install and then I add 1. I make a mistake there. I should have 1 extra credit. It's really easy to forget that Machine does install, but it ends up not really mattering in the long run. Felipe does a special order. He sees that I have all 3 types resed on the table, so no real victory there. I believe he makes a call for Corroder. So I'm sitting there. I'm sweating on those 4 advancements. This is the playstyle of this deck, if you hadn't already guessed. Have a bunch of traps, have a bunch of ridiculous agendas, and basically dare the runner to enter the magical kingdom. If the runner doesn't have exposed cards, then they really take a gamble on every single run on remotes. Either it'll be a small victory for them, they'll gain a couple of agenda points, or they may die. It could be a 4 advanced Junebug, in which case he could spend his whole turn drawing to then not die running on barely. Super dangerous. Or it could be a Cerebral Overrider with 4 advancements on it that would make all brain damage and net damage. Very, very lethal for the rest of the game. And he's seen the brain damage. He runs an HQ, I res Rainbow. It keeps him out. He only has Yogg on the table. So I'm giving Rainbow a try. It's generic ice. I end up including it a lot more often than I thought I would when I saw it spoiled. But since the Rainbow Breakers tend to run at 2 strength, it ends up not being too bad for breaking. So I mandatory draw. I advance twice over the existing credits to score a mandatory upgrades. And the weird thing about scoring mandatory upgrades, and I always forget, is that when you do, you have 2 clicks remaining afterwards. And so I score it. I have 2 clicks remaining. I install a card to gain a credit, and I draw a card. It's Archive Memories. Yay! That means I can play another Machine Machine. So this deck is basically Machine Machine recursion. And I take a credit, I believe. And I switch out my click counter to 4 clicks, and promptly forget to use it for the rest of the game. That's just kind of how it goes. So if this deck can get to the point where it can score a mandatory upgrades, then it's in pretty good shape. He runs on my private contracts. He's got 1 credit. He leaves it in play. It's 5 to trash. Private contracts is the 2 clicks per, or 2 credits per click econ. It tends to be a little difficult to use. You need to install it and let it sit, and then spend your whole turn clicking for credits normally to really get a very good deal out of it. When you've got 4 clicks, you can pull off a whole lot more credits, and it looks a lot less appetizing to the runner to trash. So it fits really, really well in this type of deck, and it's cheap enough to res that I can use it even if I go broke for the most part, and recover from econ denial decks a little bit. This deck just kind of floats in money. The Machine Machine saves a whole lot of credits. You'd be surprised how many credits it saves in the long run. I certainly am. And it's so aggressive. There's no ice on remotes, usually. You just don't need it, since you're always 4 advancing or 5 advancing cards. So I spend my whole turn doing private contracts. I click it 4 times and take 8 credits. As you can see, I actually did the click tracker once. And that leaves 6 credits on it. Runner knows he's in trouble. Felipe is trying to figure out what to do. He's halfway to getting his breakers on the table. I'm 2 points in and at 4 clicks, which is always a bad position to be in. I exchanged my money out for 5s. He plays same old thing to, I believe, okay, he does same old thing to special order, interesting play. And he looks for a breaker. I believe he pulls Corroder out this time. Yeah, so he reveals Corroder and then he installs it, I believe. HB is my longtime favorite faction. So I like the variety that Creation and Control gave it. I started playing right after Creation and Control came out. And I think Jinteki cards really give it a lot of variety. I love them. So he overdrew, he discards Last Street and Lawyer up. I believe, assuming that I will not threaten him with tag punch. I install to gain a credit, and I put 3 counters on from Machine. And then I advance it twice. So this is the nasty play. After mandatory upgrades is scored, I can do that. If I've got Machine, I can put 5 advancements on in one turn. If he runs on it, and it's Junebug, he's dead. There's no way to overdraw far without quality time. Easy. If it's a Cerebral Overrider, he's crippled for the rest of the game and can't really ever take damage again. So puts the pressure on a major one. I think he kind of detects this. I believe he does run on it. Kind of going for the no guts, no glory feel for it. Really puzzling over it. Oh, on a side note, I hopefully have improved my microphone quality. I hope that it's not quite as staticky as before and it's relatively clear. So, he does run on it. Oh, what is it? It's got 5 advancements. It's a Grindle refinery. So, he's got 1 credit. So he gains a credit, he runs on it, and he trashes it. A good move. That would have given me 5 times 4 credits. Could have given me 20. I could have advanced it 3 times, and it would have been 32 credits in total. Basically enough money for the rest of the game. So, worthwhile to trash, although I'm not exactly hurting for money. I Corp Draw. I install a second ice in front of Ichi, and I pull the 6 off of Private Contracts. So I'm sitting on 15 credits. And this 15 credits is about what this deck floats at. It's pretty rich. I picked Engineering the Future. I seriously considered Stronger Together, just to sort of double down on the level of bad card includes, but not this time. He inside jobs. Sorry for the flip. He inside jobs to my hand. He sees an Archive Memories. And I forgot he gets to see 2. I hold out the card for him, and he sees a Junebug. He trashes it. And now he knows I have Junebug. So, spooky times. Now I know Victor 1.0 is not doing anything for me. I'm gonna think about replacing him, just save a credit. I really like the credit bonus for Engineering the Future. It's really hard to argue against econ-based IDs. I think there's a good reason why all but 2 of the IDs in the starter box come with boosts to econ. It really does make a big difference in the playstyles. So I installed the trash, ice. I have 3 clicks. I'm trying to figure out what to do with it. having extra clicks on the off days makes things really odd. I play Archive Memories to pull Machine Machine out of archives. Because I intend to Machine Machine again. As I mentioned, it's a Machine Machine recursion deck.
I guess there are no cards in correct order for not yet, but then it's in the room. Yeah. Weird.
And I think I'm still trying to figure out what to do with my clicks. Don't want to Machine Machine on my last because it's a lot less dangerous. Maybe that was my last click, I'm sorry. He installs Corroder out of hand, paying 2 credits, which means he can now get into 2 out of 3 of the servers from what he knows. He's drawing, and kind of puzzling over what to do next. Kind of stalling out, I think, a little bit. Let's see. He clicks twice for money. Probably a good move. I corp draw. I see an ice, and I have a Machine Machine in hand. So let's see what I do. I click to draw because I didn't have anything worthwhile to Machine Machine. I see a Thomas Haas, which is one of the trap cards in the deck. Thomas Haas is an econ trap. He's not typically worth the credits you gain advancing him. If you just clicked for credits, you'd probably be better off, given that he reses for 1, and that he only gives you 2 credits per advancement. I think the conventional proper way to use him is to put him in a big remote iceberg server and advance him, making him look like a agenda, and then sort of bait out the runner to lose credits running on through the already rezzed ice, and then rezzing him right before accessing and gaining a small number of credits. It makes the corp swing from having no credits from rezzing ice or whatever to a big positive. And the runner ends up losing out. So it gives you an economic advantage. In this deck, it's just there to dump a bunch of free advancements on to get a little econ. And it's a good bit more flexible than Grendel Refinery is. Although Grendel Refinery ends up being worth a lot more credits. So Felipe installs Mr. Lee, and I believe he uses him 3 times. Sort of searching out and discarding Last Creep and other less valuable cards. I corp draw. I still have Machine Machine and Thomas Haas. I believe I have 2 copies of Haas now. So with no steady source of econ, I believe I play Thomas Haas here. Placing 3 counters on and then doubling down up to 5. So it's the same play again. This deck recurs Machine Machine so often that the runner has to kind of make that gamble once every 2 or 3 turns. And every single time, with enough spare money to trigger a Junebug or a Cerebral Overrider, you're putting yourself at tremendous risk. With relatively little gain. It's an agenda that I'm about to score. If it were a 3-2 or anything lower, I would have already scored it out of hand. The fact that I over-advance it means that any of the 4-2s that I have in the deck probably aren't there. Why would I bother over-advancing them, other than to act as a trap? It really is in an odd space. He runs on Jackson Howard. I use Jackson Howard, and this is sort of an intimidation move here. Machine Machine, Cerebral Overrider, and Junebug. You can kind of see these are the cards I recur. These are the cards you don't want to have. You don't want you do want to see in archives because it then lets you guess that they're not on the table. And then he decides to run on the 5 advanced card afterwards. I think partially gambling on the fact that those traps were in archives and not on the table. Unfortunately for him, I res it. With 5 advancements, Haas gives me a gain of 9 credits. It's a swing of 9. I wasted his time and I gained a lot of money. What I could have done is I could have doubled down. I could have spent the next turn putting 4 more tokens on, and then there would be nothing to prevent me from basically having a reserve of money. With a few cards as sort of risk, like quest completed, I can res it and gain the money before he can access it. So really taking advantage of that mandatory upgrades. I draw a Junebug. Felipe has 5 MU on the table. He installed a fairy. I didn't notice his error. He didn't notice his error. He corrects it, I believe, a turn or 2 now, without really a penalty for it, which is fine. It's easy to forget your MU counters in games, I found. He's also not getting cheap runs. HP tends to have annoying or expensive ice, and tends to have trouble with the remotes, I think. Well, at least in my experience with playstyle. The fact that I've got 2 ice on each of the centrals means I can be as annoying to run on as White Tree Jinteki. But I don't have anything in remotes. I don't have anything to protect. It's all in my hand. I don't think this deck would play well in Cerebral Imaging, if only because it's not that combo-centric. I don't need to have multiple, and there he goes correcting the memory there. I don't need to have multiple cards in my hand to fit the combo. I only need Mushin no Shin and 1 other card that I can advance, or would like to advance. I do think the ice needs revision. I'm not sure Rainbow's the right card. I'm a big fan of Biorides, and I install them all the time, just because they're expensive to run through, and you can click through them, but if you do, I'm gonna win while you're wasting your time. Especially with this deck. I can drop in any agenda and score it the next turn. So, at this point I have a good bit of ice floating around in my deck. So I decide to make a remote with a piece of ice. I kind of threw this deck together. Excuse me. Didn't really have a plan to have a remote. Just doing machine over and over and over again. But I realized in this game as I was playing that since I had 4 clicks a turn, I really could afford to make a remote, especially with as much money as I was sitting on, that could actually keep him out. And I need not actually use machine to score agendas. I could just use it for traps and assets exclusively, and there was no reason not to do it, given how strong I was in the state of the game. So I end up installing 2 ice in that server in order to run agendas. So I draw and I draw. I pull a reclamation order. The reclamation order is kind of there as a fix me if I need to pull out archived memories. I've not actually used it up to this point in most games, or at least games that I've won. I have played reclamation in order to get back Hedgehog, and unfortunately. So I installed a second piece of ice, and I intend to put agendas in there and overscore them to victory. So I drop mandatory upgrades in, and I advance it 3 times out of pocket, I believe. And I think I remember my install bonus. Now, this is almost the same as just doing a machine. So Felipe runs HQ. He wants to test out what I've got there. I'm sitting on a handful of money, so I don't really mind. It's Ichi 1-0. And he's kind of trying to figure out what to do with it. Ichi 1-0 is a super nice card. I don't count on it trashing programs. I count on it being super taxing. I consider it a tax dice. He uses Fairy to break it and decides to continue running, and I res a second rainbow. I tell him it's 3 fur each rainbow to get through, and that he could run on it and access HQ. He decides to take the end the run, I believe, which I thought was a little bit odd at the time. But then he special orders a fairy, and he installs the fairy, and then he plays. And this is a good move, I think. Let's see, what's he trying to find? Really puzzling over this a little bit. Sorry for the slow. He installs Fairy. Fairy is really good, unless you need to make a lot of it. And then it starts to be a little expensive. And I remind him he needs to pay for it. I believe he did not pay for it before he used it. I guess I can go back and look at the footage, but it does end up making a difference on how many clicks it does. So I guess keep a close eye, see how that plays down. So rather than having 2 clicks remaining after installing it, he took a 3 click there. I'm not sure. He plays a Count Siphon on his last click, which after taking 2 off Armitage, it costs him 2 for Ichi with Fairy and 3 for each of the rainbows with Corroder. So he runs the Account Siphon, goes down to 1 credit, and gains 12 from his Account Siphon and from his Gabe bonus. And here I apologized to him for sort of the play that I made. I advanced the card 3 times, I believe, to score the mandatory upgrades. My mandatory draw, seeing something, I don't remember. I cash in the 5 to advance 3 times and score a second mandatory upgrades, leaving me with 2 clicks for the round. And then I play closed accounts. I knew this deck needed tag punishment. After playtesting it a few times, I found that criminals would just slam me with Account Siphon over and over again. And if you don't have tag punishment, then you're really left in the dark. And the best thing to do to an Account Siphon where they don't clear the tags because they're running against HP is closed accounts. He went broke on that run. He has no income left. He emptied out his Armitage. So I was able to close accounts. It's 1 influence. It's totally awesome. So now I upgrade my click counter up to 5, And with 2 mandatory upgrades, I now have 5 clicks. 5 clicks is really dangerous. I can score 4-point agendas out of hand. I can machine at 6 credits if I wanted to. Yeah, 6. There's no reason why I would need to, because mandatory upgrades, it's a little excessive. I don't need to score it in 1 turn. And it isn't really any more scary than 5 is. So I now use my remote to install Grindel. I install click 1, advance it 3 times, and then click to pull the cash out. With 3 advancements, that gives me 12 credits. Pretty good deal for a single turn. Maybe not quite as powerful as Melange, or maybe more. I guess a little more powerful. Melange would give you effectively 9 credits with the same number of clicks. So yeah, a lot of fun. I think this deck didn't need a lot of influence. I pulled in Grindel to see if I would like it. More often than not, it ends up getting trashed, just because it's difficult to get enough counters on it. Thomas Haas is a lot more flexible for this playstyle, especially since I can put 3 free advancements on it. Actually spending money and clicks to advance Thomas Haas is not nearly as good for the money. Sorry, bumped the camera. So I've got a agenda in hand. It's a 4-2. I'm thinking about playing Magical Realm with it again, but the truth is that I don't need to. I score it out of hand. I use my install credit to advance it the 4th time. And so yeah. I use this agenda early on, if I can't get my hands on the mandatory upgrades, in order to increase the penalty for brain damage. Well, I have a lot of cards in the deck that deal brain damage. It just makes things a little scarier. It means a 5 advanced Cerebral Overrider is a flat line, even with no brain damage initially. It's just a cool card, in all, I think. I think it's a little difficult to pull off. In general, Sentinel Defense Program. I'm sorry, I was forgetting the name. It's a little difficult to pull off because it's a 2-point, and it's 4 to advance. Brain damage is hard to win at to begin with. So investing agenda points when there are 2 3/2s that you could be running instead of it is really a difficult argument to be made. I think a deck like this one, which is not really pretending to be a good deck, is the only real use of it. I would rather score mandatory upgrades, because it gives me the click, and I can. But for an out-of-hand, makes things a little scarier deck. It's a lot of fun. I think it would be a more interesting agenda as a 3-1. But I include it anyway, just to fit with the theme of the deck. I am running Fenris and Heimdall 2-0 and Cerebral Overrider, so there's a chance I could get an extra net damage out of it, but I'm not expecting to. I think, in general, people play around brain damage a lot more than they do net damage. It's a lot scarier. The reduced hand size seems like it is a major threat. I think the reality is that it isn't really so much of a threat. Taking 1 or 2 brain damage by the end of the game isn't so bad. It slows you down a lot, but if you've already got most of your rig on the board, you really don't have to worry about it. I initially was frustrated with good players, especially Shaper players, running and taking brain damage because they couldn't afford to get in. They didn't mind the end of the game having a brain damage. I was frustrated because I thought people would need to break brain damage, but they really don't. So I machine to put 3 counters on. I've got 3 clicks remaining. And I believe I spend them advancing. So I take the 5, split it out to 3 and 3. I'm now remembering, as I got through the game, that I get an extra credit for installing even with machine. So I place 3 credits on. And we both kind of had a laugh because a 6 advanced guard is super spooky. There's no way you're going to survive 6 advancements on a Junebug. Or a Cerebral Overrider. That card is now uncheckable without exposed then, or related effects. So I talk about strategy a little bit with Felipe, and because I feel like I have the game thoroughly in hand. He has to run R&D, because I would have already scored an agenda if I had it, and out of hand. And I convince him this out of the goodness of my heart, of course. And he runs into a Heimdall tool. I meant the advice genuinely. I wasn't trying to trap him into running into a difficult barrier. It is the correct move to go. I don't have any agendas in hand. They are all in R&D, even though that ice is exposed. And I convince him additionally that he ought break through the end of the run subroutines and take the brain and net damage. That it would be more worthwhile, that he could have a chance to pull an agenda. And also deny me of credits. And he takes the 2 damage. It's a knight and an inside job. So bad. Both of those cards, knight being 7 strength, could get through hosted on a Heimdall 2-0 for 6 credits. An inside job would have wasted me the effect of Heimdall 2-0. I probably wouldn't have rezzed it. And he runs to the end, he gets through, he bypasses each even out, and he pulls the top card, and it's a prior wreck. It's a 5-3. So he's now at match point 2. He's at 5 points. I didn't know that's what the card was, but all that to say, my advice is correct. When you're at match point, you have to make critical decisions as runner, including taking the brain damage even though it's not comfortable. So now I'm searching for agendas. I draw and I draw. I see another Sentinel defense program, so I know I have it in the bag, basically. And I advance, and I think about advancing again, and then I remember, oh, right, it costs 1 to res. I need to have 1 spare in the bank, so I gain a credit, and I put the credit on. So it's now sitting on 8 advancements. And I have 1 credit in the bank. Another bonus of using Thomas Haas is that you can stay at a sub 5 credit level, which is the point where account segment is valuable. And anytime I want to, I can pay to res Thomas Haas and gain the money to, say, res an ice or score an agenda if it's on my turn. So it's a nice way to kind of keep hold of the economic momentum, although it's a little bit absurd to have that many advancements on it. I did play one game where I got Queen's Gambited over it, which is pretty fun. A hint to anyone who's thinking about playing Queen's Gambit: don't advance the thing that the corporation wants to advance. It doesn't work. You can get lucky with traps, but it's usually not worth it. But that's for another time. Not to say that I haven't done it. I may have even uploaded a video where I did it. You learn that lesson the hard way, I guess. Felipe is trying to figure out how he can get into R&D. He can't. afford it. I res Thomas Haas and pull in all the money. Although I don't really need all of it. All I need is 4 credits, and I score with the game-winning point after. I actually top-decked another one, it looks like. Which is interesting because if he had been able to afford R&D, another R&D run, he would have pulled the game out. So kind of interesting there. I could have afforded to keep him out, but it was really close. And here you can see I'm very excited about this. Sort of extolling the virtues of how hard it is to run against the multiple advanced server. So I hope you enjoyed the game. Let me know if you're interested in sort of the deck play style. I might upload a deck list if that's what people are interested in. I can include a deck list with the uploaded videos if that's something you want to see. I only have my own. My opponent's decks are their own. Most of the decks I play with are pretty casual. I haven't had an opportunity to really play in tournaments since I moved. Hopefully that can be something I do in the future. So yeah, talking about Zaibatsu loyalty. I have it in the deck, if only because if I ever run against Silhouette, or someone who's playing Satellite Uplink, or Infiltration, or sort of expose events, or forbid it happen on black card, this deck would just be ruined. I need to have a prevent expose effect card in it. Kind of funny, and the card hasn't seen a lot of play, but it really does well with Machine Machine, and kind of playing cards both out here. Machine Machine kind of needs it. You need to have exposed prevention events. I wasn't able to get Saibatsu loyalty on the table. It's 4 to trash, and it's free to res. You can pay, I believe I don't think it's 1 credit. It is 1 credit. It's 1 credit or trash to prevent an expose effect. So I could definitely afford it. I think if the runner was actually running expose effects, they would opt to trash it, even out of forecast trash. So, yeah. And I also pointed out I only have 1 copy of Junebug in the deck. It's just there to be scary. No other reason. It makes, after it's trash out of hand, or out of R&D or HQ, it's really spooky. And the runner doesn't want to run the trash. Anyway, fun deck, long video. I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to uploading more in the future. Thanks.